Hi everyone, welcome to my virtual talk. This is Yuan, a graduate student at UC Berkeley. Today, I'll be talking about how do disparities reproduce themselves. On May 25th, 2020, George Floyd suffocated to death after a police officer knelt on his neck for 8 minutes, 46 seconds. His death sparked worldwide protests against racial disparities in the criminal justice system. As cognitive scientists, what can we do to help put an end to racial disparities? Perhaps, if only people knew the full extent of racial disparities in our society, they'd all be longing for change. However, numbers don't always speak for themselves. For example, Hetty and Eberhard found that white voters exposed to greater racial disparities in the prison system were even less willing to petition against three strikes law that contributed to the overrepresentation of black inmates in the very first place. So why is that the case? The researchers explain that for people with stereotypic associations linking blacks to crime, a blacker prison made them more fearful of crime and therefore more likely to uphold harsh criminal law. So, perhaps if we can get rid of such stereotypes, disparities will just disappear. We argue that it's not so simple. Imagine you're at this casino and are told someone is really, really good. You saw them putting 2 coins into the first slot machine and a 5 into the second. Which one would you bet your money on, and why? If you say the second machine, is it because you have stereotypes associating it with higher rewards? Perhaps not, since you've never ever seen these machines before. It is more likely that you're using some sort of naive utility calculus, thinking that if this person is truly knowledgeable about the machines, as people say, and tries to maximize their expected utilities, it only makes sense if the second machine has a higher reward rate than the first one. So when it is your turn, you'll follow their footsteps, thereby reproducing disparities that you see without having any pre-existing stereotypes. In the current study, we want to test if that's indeed what people do in a police scenario. To simulate police encounters without invoking people's racial stereotypes, we designed a game called the Golden Ticket. In this game, a robot chicken lays 1 egg at a time, which may or may not have a golden ticket inside. The chicken is an analogy to a social group and eggs members from that group. As a player, your goal is to win golden tickets, just like a police officer's goal is supposedly to catch criminals. To buy an egg, you need to pay a token, which is both costly and limited in quantity, similar to a police officer's time and energy. Participants were told that Alex, the best player of this game, knows each chicken's hit rate. That is, the probability an egg from this chicken has a golden ticket. Also, Alex is said to spend tokens carefully and does not waste them for no good reason. Throughout this experiment, Alex played a total of 12 chickens, each laying 6 eggs. They could decide whether to buy an egg or to let it go. After Alex was done with the chicken, participants were asked to estimate its hit rate and decide whether they would also want to buy an egg from it. In experiment 1, Alex did not open the eggs. In this case, all one could rely on was the check rates, that is, the probability Alex would buy an egg from a chicken. So by definition, the expected utility of buying an egg is the expected reward of winning a ticket minus the cost of a token. The expected reward is a ticket's value multiplied by a chicken's hit rate. According to the Naïve Utility Calculus, participants understood Alex's behavior only by assuming the higher the expected utility, the higher the check rate. The relationship between these two can be described by this logistic function. You can check out our paper for more modeling details. The bottom line is that using this model, people can infer chickens' hit rates from Alex's check rates. We tested 62 US participants on Amaturk, and here are the results. The figure on the left shows that participants reproduced disparities in Alex's sampling behavior. That is, the more eggs Alex bought from a given chicken, the more likely participants would do the same. The figure on the right suggests that participants inferred chickens' hit rate from Alex's check rates in pretty much the same way as our Naïve Utility Calculus model. So, how can we break this endless cycle of disparities reproducing themselves? A possible solution is to show people hit rates in the egg samples. Back to the police encounters. If people see that African Americans who are checked more often by the police are no more likely to commit crimes than other races, they may infer differently about the true hit rates or crime rates. To find out how exactly, we conducted experiment 2, where Alex opened the eggs they bought in the end, so participants knew the hit rates in the egg samples. On critical trials, observed hit rates are in conflict with check rates. When Alex bought 5 or 6 eggs out of 6, most were empty. And when Alex bought only 1 or 2 eggs, all had tickets. However, you may think that participants would suspect Alex is not truly knowledgeable or even deliberately misleading. So we added 6 filler trials where observed hit rates go hand in hand with check rates. So if participants trust Alex blindly, they may dismiss observed hit rates on the critical trials as flukes and still rely on Alex's check rates only. This check rate only model is exactly the same as the one we used in experiment 1. However, it is also possible the participants now fully rely on the new check rate hit rate information and ignore Alex's behavior altogether. This is captured by the hit rate only model. Alternatively, participants could combine both pieces of information to infer chickens' true hit rates. This is captured by the check and hit rates model. We tested 67 US participants on Amaturk this time, and here are the new results. First of all, as you can see in this graph, none of the 3 models that I just described captured people's behavior exactly. In the first 2 scenarios, where check rates were low but hit rates were high, the check and hit rates model was the best fit. In the last 4 scenarios, where check rates were high but hit rates were low, the hit rate only model acted the closest to human behavior. So let's take a moment to understand why this might be the case. Here is one possibility. Hit rate information may be more salient than check rates. In the last 4 scenarios, there's both strong evidence for high check rates. Alex bought 5 or 6 eggs out of 6, and strong evidence for low hit rates. Out of these 5 or 6 eggs, at most 1 had tickets. So, when the strength of evidence is more or less equal, people relied more on observed hit rates. However, in the first 2 scenarios, there's strong evidence for low check rates. Alex only bought 1 or 2 eggs out of 6, but only weak evidence for high hit rates. All had tickets, but only out of 1 or 2 eggs. In this case, people relied on both check rates and hit rates to infer the true hit rates. Of course, what I offered was one explanation out of many possible ones. Future research is needed to figure out the actual inferential processes that might be going on. To sum it up, in experiment 1, people used a knowledgeable utility maximizing agent sampling behavior to infer a group's hit rate, assuming that high check rates are driven by high hit rates. This may be one reason why racial disparities are so persistent, even though people are aware of their existence. In experiment 2, when it is also revealed whether those checked by the agent had what they were looking for or not, participants relied more on this new hit rate information and did not blindly copy the agent's behavior. This may be a potential way to stop the vicious cycle of disparities reproducing themselves. So all this talk about racial disparities, we didn't actually use social groups as stimuli, which is what we are planning to do next. It is possible that people think agents are more variable than objects, so observed hit rates in the samples matter less than they did in a golden ticket game. However, the reverse may well be true if people think members of a social group are bound together by some common essence and therefore less prone to change. Moreover, in real life, it's not just one police officer repeatedly targeting minority racial groups, but many officers across the nation doing the same. It may be more challenging to break free from racial disparities when there's consensus between multiple utility maximizing agents. This is also worth examining in future research. What I presented today is still an early stage of this work, so we very much look forward to your questions and feedback. Please feel free to shoot me an email or check out our paper and the source code. Thank you all for listening.